Hello, and welcome to this edition of Security, Compliance, and Pace of Change. My name is Dave Randall, and I'll be hosting this session today. I'm here with four of my colleagues. I'll let each of them introduce themselves. Let's start with T.
Hi, everybody. My name is T. Amadoye, and I'm an engineer on the Intune side. I work focusing on configuration policies. Yeah.
Thanks, T. And Asavri.
Hey everyone, my name is Asavari Navathe. I am a product manager on the Intune team working on security baselines and industry baselines.
Andre.
Hi everyone, I'm Andre Della Monica. I work in the Windows Auto Patch team.
Thanks so much, Andre. And last but not least, Mike.
Hey everyone, I'm Mike Donosky. I'm a PM on the Intune team, focused on everything from policy to security to some cool Copilot and AI scenarios.
Thanks so much, everybody, for the introductions. I'm excited to be here. I hope you are as well, because I know we've got lots of folks watching interested in understanding about how to deal with the things that are changing so quickly and make sure that Intune is ready for your organization. So if you've got questions and you're in the audience, feel free to post your questions at aka.ms/AMA/keep the pace. And that will bring your questions directly to our panelists. All right, let's jump right in. I've got a question that came in early, and it's a great one to get things started off. What is the right way to design compliance policies? Single policy versus multiple policies, and how do you balance reporting versus simplicity? I like this one on compliance policies because it's square in the crosshairs of both security as well as policy. So does anybody want to take up that question? Okay, Dano?
I'll take a shot and I'll tee up some other questions. So it's an interesting question, and I'll point something out because compliance can be an overloaded term. A lot of people refer to config policy as compliance policy, but compliance policy is really important in its actual namesake as a policy type, because that's a policy that gets computed to figure out if a device is compliant or not in the Intune system. And what that means is when you use conditional access, you can gate access to different corporate resources based on the compliance state of a device. And so that compliance policy is going to determine that compliance state of a device and then move into whether that device can access corporate resources through conditional access. But it's also used for configuration policies, and which can be really big. I think I was just looking at the numbers. I think it has ballooned up to north of 17,000 settings in our policy sort of framework behind the scenes. There's really no right or wrong answer. It depends kind of on how complex and how simple you'd like to be. I think over the time we've seen folks move to using more granular small policies so they can make exceptions and make changes. I'll bring this up for T because I think a lot of people are like, oh, well, if I make a policy that's too big, is it going to be slow? Is it going to be, is the policy computation going to be faster? But honestly, I'll hand it over to T. We don't really have, I'll sort of spoil the warning in a little bit too. It doesn't really matter to us, like the size of the policy and stuff like that. So if you have anything to add from like a performance aspect.
Yeah, I think what you said is exactly right, Dano. It doesn't really matter to us if you have 100 settings within the policies versus 2 settings within the policy. So I think whatever it is that is best for your whatever purpose that you're trying to accomplish, I think that works for us.
Yeah. The only time you get into trouble is if you have like thousands of settings, you'll get some load time. Or if you have if you're like, we have 1,000 settings, we're going to do one setting in every policy. Then your lists are going to take a little bit long to load. So long as you don't do anything extreme, you'll be great. You'll be fine. Cool.
I just wanted to add with compliance policies specifically, they also have the concept of grace period. So just from like a how do we design it? Take it category by category. Same with what you would do for configuration policies. You want to have some sort of phase rollout, put in a grace period, take it sort of one step at a time, so you're not surprised by anyone, calling your help desk because they're locked out unexpectedly. So.
Yeah.
I think there's some great suggestions in there in terms of splitting up policies, whether it's for different organizations. Sometimes you have several different organizations that may need different compliance settings, and so you'll break them up. I think, Dana, you had mentioned that earlier, as well as your comments, Aubrey. So thank you all. All right, next question coming from Tech Community. This one touches on AI. So let's get ready to venture into some AI. The question is, the Intune agents themselves have a dependency on Security Copilot that doesn't make much sense to me because they're not really doing security stuff. Will we ever get AI agents for device and app management that don't require another product or license? So I know that our Copilot folks are not necessarily in the room, but hopefully we've got some good context here for exactly the answer to this question on Security Copilot and other AI agents.
Yeah, I can totally take this one as well. And
Great.
So Security Copilot is an ecosystem in which we can declare things and capabilities and then tie them together into scenarios. The reason why it's in Security Copilot is because we often say that Intune is the thing that sticks all the other scenarios together and gets it out into end users' hands. And security is no different. And so what's cool about it is you may not be doing security things, but security sort of runs as a backbone to all the things that we do as IT admins in endpoint management. And it's often that balance of security and productivity. And so while you may not be doing it in the forefront, like you may not be thinking about security in the forefront with the things that you're doing, that ecosystem allows us to tie scenarios together where we can bring security information into IT scenarios and then bring IT information into security scenarios. And so because they're all sort of living in one platform and one ecosystem, they can play together. So we have an EPM solution where you can look up threat intelligence information for binaries that you're approving, which can be super important. We've had people stop attacks by getting this information at time of escalation approval, stuff like that. And then we're always looking to expand those capabilities. So let's say you're going to deploy an app and you want to see if there's any known vulnerabilities or something like that for that version before. The idea is just keep going and going on how we can bring security in, because the balance of Intune and IT is generally around balancing productivity with security. Now, to the second part of the question on will we ever do anything that doesn't require a product license, we're all learning about AI and we're all thinking about ways that it can be used. And again, I'll hand this to T to talk a little bit about, I'll specifically talk about search and some of the ways. So it might not be a thing that you're going and using, but there may be things underneath. And of course, in responsible AI, we'll always tell you when something's using AI so that you know how to properly judge and measure the response. But T, if you want to share a little bit on that, and then if anyone else has any other concepts they want to talk about in this subject.
All right. So for search, we are definitely, like Daniel said, we're continually investigate how can we expand our capability within Intune, within the Intune portal, and just ensuring that we have the best intelligence that we can get, especially with the advancement of AI that we see. So we're continuing to investigate these opportunities and, having it within the Intune portal. And so these are things that, we would love to get feedback on and see, what exactly you would love to see within the portal that has AI native capabilities. And so that's definitely something that we would love to see. Yeah.
Awesome.
Excellent. Thank you. So from Tech Community, again, we'll take a different turn away from AI and we'll talk about shared use devices. So the question is, for shared use Windows devices, such as kiosks, conference rooms, manufacturing workstations, Is device-based or user-based compliance the recommendation? A little tie back to our first question on compliance. Any thoughts about compliance policies for device-based versus user-based on kiosks?
If it's me, I'm going with device. If it's me, I'm going with device because you don't know who the user is, right? It's that simple. Quite literally, when a device checks in, it tells us, here's the user and here's the device. And then we figure out how things are targeted. And that's how we determine what policy to enforce or what policy to send down. So if you're device-based, it's going to follow the device. Outside of the kiosk scenario, that's an easy way to remember it. Device policy, device targeted, device assigned policy follows the device for anyone who signs into it. User-based policy follows the user. So if they go use another device. So that's another reason why you might want to think about how people are using the device. You may not want a scenario where someone signs in and suddenly their policy starts taking effect. So there's some things you can do and some careful considerations you can make. But for like a kiosk, sometimes if it's actually userless and there's no workplace join, when the device checks in, it doesn't even tell us a user. Like if you use the device enrollment manager account. So there's ways that you can make sure that the experience that you're setting on a device is super clean, doesn't get interrupted.
Seems reasonable. I was gonna go ahead, Andre.
No, I just want to add something there. I absolutely agree with Dano here. And also we got similar question when customers are managing Windows updates for those devices. So it's always device based. It's also because there's a requirement in terms of how these devices are communicating with our services as well. But just want to share this here that we're looking from the Windows Update side as well into some sort of a user-based targeting for updates. And I'd love to hear if there's any feedback in the tech community around that. But I agree the device-based is really the foundation that we need to aim for.
Yep. And use filters too. Use filters so when that device checks in, if it says, "Oh, I'm a Windows, I'm Windows 11 this version" or stuff like that, or that filters as well is another way to sort of like narrow down those assignments other than security groups.
Good reminder, thanks. And on the subject of filters, I will say I'll kind of echo Andre's request. If you guys have feedback about things that you would like to see added to the filters list of what's supported, go to aka.ms/intune feedback and let us know what other capabilities you'd like to see. All right, next question, again from tech community. This is an interesting one. I love this one. So our goal is to limit access on mobile devices for mail to webmail /M365 or to the Outlook app, either compliant enrolled device or MAM without enrollment. It seems if we require compliant devices or MAM in the conditional access policy, it also blocks webmail. How would you configure or enforce this use case? Lots of detail in there.
I'm curious if this also means that it's blocked on Edge. I don't know if that limits end users from only using Edge, for example, to get access to webmail, and if that's an issue for this particular customer, it sounds like, because they would want maybe webmail to work from any browser. I think we've seen that as a classic sort of CA trap here.
Yeah. So sorry, Sabri, what's your suggestion around this?
Well, I guess it depends. I think Edge can also be targeted with MAM policy, right? So Edge would technically be acceptable, I would say, as a browser for webmail access. So I'm curious if that's sufficient enough, or it will limit you to basically Outlook app or Edge to get access to mail, but at least you could use Edge for that webmail access too.
Got it. All right. Yeah, we may see a little clarification come through before the end of our time, but thanks for that. Thanks for that.
I can add another just tip. Conditional access, what if, is great if you want to sort of see what happens with a policy and like look at different types of sign-ins and see if they would be enforced or not enforced. And then also, we're talking about mobile devices here. but I would also encourage folks to take a look at the Edge profile and the Windows MAM options for folks who would be accessing potentially mail or potentially corporate resources through Edge, making sure they have a profile that has security and stuff like that. Conditional access is awesome. Be careful with it. Don't lock yourself out. There's a whole support team designed just for that because it happens. And there's probably something to split out webmail through Outlook. It could be that if you're requiring Outlook, webmail would be blocked, but there might be a way that you can add it to an allow list or something like that. I'm not super sure about the details, but try the what if, and then see if that, see which rule is blocking you.
Awesome. Thanks, Dano.
Yeah.
All right, next question from Tech Community again. Can phishing resistant MFA be enforced during device join or enrollment, including UBI, in Microsoft Entra ID and Intune, and what controls or limitations exist? That looks like a
Autopilot?
great question for some post-event follow-up, unless anybody has thoughts.
I mean,
Andre
said the magic word.
Autopilot.
Autopilot. Yeah. If folks are unfamiliar with Autopilot, it's a way that you pre-declare devices so that when they turn on, they show up as being registered to your organization. Anyone outside of your organization won't be able to authenticate and turn that thing on and get into Windows. You can also then determine what policies are going to be there and what that UBI experience looks like. I believe it supports phishing-resistant MFA. I know I've had to answer some prompts on my phone and use Authenticator and things like that in order to get in. But yeah, there's definitely documentation on this, on what all the options are for Autopilot. Autopilot is definitely the route that you want to go for controlling the UBI experience for enrollment and when devices first join fresh out of the box.
Awesome, thanks.
Yeah.
All right, next question comes from X. Why do devices sometimes show as compliant in Intune, but still get blocked by conditional access? Do we have any timing experts on the call?
I think this is a loaded question. No, it could be more than timing. It could be more than timing. It could be the device just became compliant. Basically what happens, and I think even in the last Tech Community session, I got to give a little shout out to Exchange on-prem allow block quarantine rules, ABQ rules. Shout out for anyone who's been around for 15 years in the IT space. But basically, it's all it's doing is there's some flag on the box or on the access, and then back in the day you'd have to phone someone up and say like, hey, I want to get email on my Palm Pilot. Can you please allow me to do that? Someone would manually flip it over. Conditional access is essentially the same concept behind the scenes. It just takes time sometimes for that flag to get flipped over. But also conditional access has all sorts of other types of rules in it. So there could be something else going on behind the scenes that's making that sign-in be deemed as non-compliant and therefore not allowed to get conditional access. And your sign-in logs are going to be your friend because you'll see the exact rule and reason why a device was deemed not capable to conditionally access those resources. And so check that out. And if it is the compliance state, go back and look at the policy. Make sure that the device is still active and checking in, because there's that default compliance policy that'll kick a device into not compliant if it hasn't checked in a while. So a couple things you can do there.
Awesome. Thanks, Dano. All right, next question comes back from Tech Community. Regarding driver and firmware updates via AutoPatch when an OEM has a competing tool, such as Dell Command Update, is it recommended to run both, pick one, or a specific hybrid pattern? Is it possible to use filters within AutoPatch rings to target only specific OEM devices? I think this is an Andre question, in fact.
Yes, and a little pause here. The first AutoPatch is targeted question here. Yay! It's not only for compliance. So going straight to the answer here. I just had to highlight this.
Yeah.
The recommendation here is to use the updates, the firmware updates that are published by those OEMs into the Windows Updates channel. So that'll be the recommendation. So if there's an update that's not published there, of course, we're not gonna. It's not recommended. It's not feasible to use with auto patch. And if you need to use some sort of like incremental update or something that changes, it requires some more coordination that's not available in the Windows Updates channels. Yes, you have to use other tools to do that. So I would say both, because there are updates that are published in the Windows Update channel that you can leverage and update those from auto patch, and others that are not, that will require you to do some coordination yourself for now. And today, for the filters question, it's not possible to do that rollout using filters feature from Intune, for example, for drivers updates. However, I want to say this and plug like an upcoming update on the drivers. We're working a bunch of graph APIs, controls, and things for drivers. So stay tuned for some updates later this year.
Quick question on that, Andre. When you say you're updating graph APIs, how is that going to enable our customers to do things differently than they may be doing today through the UI?
So what's going to happen is, and thank you for the question, Dave. Auto patch is one of the big updates that we're going to have later this year and next year as well. Auto patch is evolving from being an update management platform to being an update management platform. And then where Intune is going to remain the first party solution for auto patch, you want a UX that's Microsoft first party, you should definitely keep leveraging Intune. Intune is our friends Intune here. They're our closest partners. But then if you have other tools outside Intune, or other tools that you've been using for a number of years today, or even your in-house solution for device management, you'll be able to leverage AutoPatch Graph APIs for drivers and firmware, quality updates, feature updates as well, and some of the data APIs that we're going to provide as well for reporting.
Awesome. Thanks, Andre. All right, switching over to our friends coming from LinkedIn. We have a question. Can we use conditional access for Edge and cloud apps only and block native desktop apps as a whole?
All right, I'll venture out on this one into some territory. So please take this with please follow up with the documentation. The idea behind, I think it's Intune App Protection and Edge, is you can require that there's a work profile in Edge that is enforced with Intune policy that then gets checked by conditional access. And this is enforced by Intune App Protection, or MAM, Mobile Application Management, which is the, shout out to, again, some more very old acronyms. And so basically, it's important to think about this, because if you have conditional access fully set up, you might have this as a current gap where someone might be able to go in and use a web browser and get into corporate resources if you don't have it actively blocked. So definitely check out. There's some good blogs. There's actually some great blogs from some of our some customer acceleration team folks on how to set this all up. So definitely go check out the documentation that talks about this. And it's in the Edge documentation, and it's all about making sure that Edge and not other things can get through conditional access.
Excellent. Thanks, Dano. All right. We are getting close to the end. So my last question is a quick lightning round for each one of you. What are the most common mistakes you see with policies that weaken security without admins realizing it? I feel like there needs to be some Jeopardy music here.
Yeah.
Lines, I guess. Just some quick ones, since this is the lightning round. We got security baselines. We, as folks know, those are recommended configurations that are coming in from security experts at Microsoft, and we're starting to support some external baselines as well. Common pitfalls there is not updating security baselines if those are what you're using and that's the line that you're going down. We have updates available. We have an update flow available. Folks sometimes take longer because of processes and other things going on, approvals. Try to update those so that you can stay current with the latest security recommendations. Also, just conflicting policies between security baselines or settings catalog, etc. That's a really common mistake. Not necessarily all. We definitely can do more on the Microsoft Intune side to improve surfacing that conflict for customers, but that is obviously a common problem, and which can result in being less secure than you think you are. And then, I guess just not having any policy at all, potentially thinking like not configuring anything or not even using like a basic security baseline might be a good start, or something in settings catalog, etc. Those are probably the ones that are top of mind as common pitfalls that I can see.
Okay, I think I can go next. For me, I say that not using settings catalog and using like the legacy the device configuration policies. I think settings catalog does provide good support for the settings that are available. And so moving on to settings catalog and leaving the legacy device configuration policies will definitely help to boost your security posture for
Awesome. Thanks, Pete. Andre, you got a quick one?
Yes, I have a yes. And from the Windows updates perspective here, okay, that's kind of I'm taking that hat here, and it's more like a human policy, okay. So make sure to leverage your the insiders builds that we release with ahead with some of the updates that are coming, and also please work on your internal processes when it comes to updates for testing your updates. Having the right representation of your organization and devices in ring 0, 1, 2 to avoid having problems with updates. That's more like a human policy than like a system policy.
All right, and let's close with you, Dano.
Yeah, lightning round as fast as I can. Don't worry about over-targeting. So like if you're fixing something for a vulnerability, don't just target the devices that are currently impacted. Make sure you hit the rest of the environment if you can without creating conflict. Second one is don't use custom OMA when you can use settings catalog. Shout out to T for that one. And then the last one, I forgot. So that's it. We have 2. Great.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining today. Thanks for my panelists of experts. We've got one more AMA in this edition of the Intune Tech Community Live. So up next will be your chance to ask questions about improving visibility and control across your entire device estate with Intune. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.